Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
5 things I wish I knew before I started saltwater fishing. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, and
Luke Simon. So technically it's 5 things we wish we knew before.
Yeah, that's like a longer, subject line, won't fit in the thing. So, but the Royal Week. So we hear from a lot of different types of anglers here in Insider Club. We're approaching 60,000 members in the club, and that's everything from the tackle discounts to the Smart Fishing Spots app, to the community, to, the tackle tester. The list just keeps going on and on and on. And we have a smorgasbord of types of anglers, meaning we got a lot of boaters, we got some kayakers, we got some shore-based anglers, we got people who are just getting into it, we got people who are really, really good at bass fishing, like that was kind of us, and are now really wanting to get into saltwater fishing. And we have some really experienced people. We have full-time guides that pay to be in the club just to be around other people for the network effect we'll talk about here in a little bit, and of course save money on your tackle as well. And one thing that's consistent is it seems like everyone makes the same handful of mistakes, the same ones that we made, and we wish someone had told us what we're about to share on this podcast. So let's get into it. These are the mistakes that we made. We spent who knows how much money on all of these, and I believe even if you're experienced, this will either be a good reminder or you might even have an aha moment like we have so many times. So let's kick it off, Luke. The first one, and this might be controversial, but we believe, and we have data to back this up, this is not a feeling, that fluorocarbon is not for saltwater fishing. Mic drop. Okay. Well, why not, Luke?
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and save you money off the bat if that's what you're buying. Because initially when we started Salt Strong, if you went through our initial courses, we did recommend, it was me doing the course, and we did recommend fluorocarbon. And because all the marketing, there's so much profit on fluorocarbon line, and so there's so much push of fluorocarbon, and I believed it. I believed all the marketing hype that it was invisible, that it was more abrasive than normal mono, and all this stuff. Those are the 2 biggest ones. And so I literally built a test assembly for our members to actually prove how much better fluorocarbon was. And I was blown away when I saw that not only was it not better, it was provably worse for my biggest factor, which was abrasion. Targeting snook and an occasional tarpon, we have a lot of abrasion on the lines. And fluorocarbon, as soon as it's nicked just a little bit, it completely loses its power. It is shocking how quick it is. So if we're fishing around oysters, right around any kind of sharp objects, freshwater might be a little bit different. So I won't say to not use it in freshwater, but in saltwater, you have a lot of toothy critters. You're fishing near a lot of oysters, ideally, or at least shell bottom, and it's just very easy to get the line nicked. In regular mono, it handles so much better after a little bit of use. And so the abrasion was provable. I have, and we can link down to a lot of tests. I've done a ton of tests. Basically a 15-pound mono, and all the tests I've done, not even a fancy mono, like a regular bulk spool of mono will completely dominate a 20-pound fluorocarbon that's actually made for lead. It's like the expensive fluorocarbon is what I was testing against. And that's now I finally realized, man, like I miss thinking about all those snook that chewed through my line over the years. And it's heartbreaking. And now, again, I just switched down a level in mono to have the same equivalent diameter, and the abrasion is better. So I think people that do believe that fluorocarbon has better results, the only reason is because it's thinner. They made it just a little bit thinner compared to the same power rating of mono, and that's the reason. So if you just get a mono that's the same diameter of the fluoro that you're using, then it's going to catch just as many fish. It's going to get just as many strikes. More importantly, it's going to lose less fish because they won't be able to break off, and it has more stretch which helps keep them pinned.
To talk about some of the knot contests as well, and bought that expensive machine to do a strength test.
Yeah, the knots. So yeah, I have a machine that does knot strength as well, and the knot strength is comparable. If anything, fluorocarbon has a slight advantage on knot strength. But again, as soon as it's nicked just a little bit, the power goes away. It falls apart.
It doesn't have an advantage when you're talking about the same 20 versus 20.
Oh, correct. Yeah, but the fair way to do it is to equate diameters. So yeah, once I started equating diameter, originally
I could argue that the fair way to do it is what strength is it supposed to break at.
Yeah, a 20-pound mono is going to have a stronger knot connection than a 20-pound fluoro all day long.
See, that's what you have to say, because that's a whole lot different story than saying fluoro has an advantage, because it technically doesn't.
But yeah, and so then the factor is, okay, what about the invisibility, right? Fluorocarbon is being branded as being invisible. It's obviously not invisible, right? We can see it in the water. If we can see it, the fish can see it. And it's all about the science that is on the side of those who push it, is that the refraction of light, it's the similar diameter to or similar density to salt water, so that there's less refraction of light when it goes through the line. But when we're dealing with light line, like 30 pound, even 40 pound or less, it's so thin that there's not refraction of light that is causing any sort of issues. It's the reflection off of the outside of the line. And there's no studies that reflection is any different with fluorocarbon than regular monofilament. And fluorocarbon is a monofilament. It's just slightly more dense. But long story short, is that my catch rate has gone up, even when going down to the Keys in super clear water. So after realizing that it was worse with abrasion, I spent about 2 years going back and forth, because I was loaded up with fluoro. And so I would have one rod with fluoro, one with mono, and I could not tell a difference in the amount of strikes per hour. So like it's hard to prove what the fish can see, where they can't see. But as far as actually getting strikes, even when I go down to the Keys, I'm using regular mono, and I'm catching more fish now than I did years ago when I was using fluoro. So
yeah, and to be clear,
save your money.
Yeah, to be clear, when we started doing all this testing over the last couple of years, we went in almost with a bias towards fluoro, because that's all we use. We believed all the same marketing stuff that you guys probably have seen. And so if anything, we went in with the bias thinking, oh man, it's going to crush mono. We kept being surprised over and over and over again. We've documented. We've reached out to many of the big companies saying, hey, can you refute this? Nothing yet, at least as we're recording this now. And we will be glad to do a video saying, hey, here's where the science says this is not true. But so far, we haven't seen it. And if you say, well, hey, I saw so-and-so with the big TV show talking about it, go look to see who sponsors the shows. As Luke said, there's a ton of money in fluoro, way more than normal, boring mono, where there's not much money in spread. And a lot of these pros and the people you see on TV shows and stuff, they are sponsored by these companies to say how much better it is. And either means they're sponsored and getting paid to say it, or they haven't tested it. And we were the same. We hadn't tested it. We just believed the marketing stuff and said, oh, it must be better. And until we started testing it and trying to find other studies out there that proved it was true, proof's in the pudding. And like I said, we have documented this, and who knows how many different videos now all over YouTube and blog posts. So yeah, save your money.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, hey, maybe we're being paid by the mono companies to say this. We sell both. We sell both fluoro and mono, and so we actually make more money if you buy the fluoro than mono. But like our duty, and this is why we're different than other companies, is that we basically we go out of business if we don't help our members catch more fish while saving money on all the things they need, and so we do everything to make sure that we fulfill that. And this fluoro versus mono. Again, the tests have been crazy clear that the fluoro not only is more expensive, but actually has worse performance. Now, this is an easy way we can save you some money right off the bat.
But if you're still dying to just overspend, please do it at fishstrong.com. We will gladly take all that extra money. So,
yeah, we don't accept. And just so you're new to us, we don't accept any sort of sponsorships from any company as well. We're grassroots. We are 100%. Backed and supported by members, and that's where all of our loyalty goes to.
Yep. So everything you see at fishstrong.com, we buy with our own hard-earned money. We inventory, we ship it. All that stuff is us, and it's stuff that we've tested and we personally believe in. So on to number two. Number two is the 90-10 zone. If you don't know what that means, it means that 90% of all the feeding fish, like meaning the majority of all the feeding predator fish, redfish, speckled trout, snook, flounder, the ones that we're trying to catch in saltwater, can be found in just 10% of any area at any given day, time of day, etc. So that means you can't just catch fish anywhere. And that could be tough. And it was overwhelming for us. Remember, we first started doing inshore saltwater fishing in Marco Island. It was like kind of the first experience. And then more up in Port Charlotte, a little bit closer to home, and then Tampa Bay. And all of those areas, they're so vast, right? And you got these mangrove shorelines and sandbars and all kinds of areas that look real fishy. In reality, there's really small amounts of area that all the fish are going to hold. And it does change. Fish have tails and no fences. We say that all the time. Fish have tails and no fences. I'll repeat it because it's important. They are moving. They're moving during seasons. They're certainly moving during tide cycles. They're obviously moving as the bait moves around as well. So that means you can't just have 1 to 3 spots and rely on them all year long and catch fish. That's impossible. And ask us how I know, because that's what we tried to do for a while there, and it was not the most lovely results. So Luke, talk about the 90-10. I know I first heard it, at least remembered from the book, The Scientific Angler, where this guy went underwater, Paul Johnson, and is probably documented more about predator fish, both salt and fresh, about how they react and where they live, and kind of the biology. And one of the things he said was that over and over again, every time he went down to go film these fish, 90% of them were in 10% of every body of water. He's like, it was 100% of the time this held to be true. And really, and same with drones. We take the drones up and it just keeps proving true over and over again.
Yeah. So the 90-10 rule is crucial, and it can seem a bit overwhelming. Obviously what you're wondering is how do I find the 10% of the small spots that have 90% of the feeding fish? And it basically scales up and down. So it's not like Tampa Bay. Like if you're looking at Tampa Bay or wherever you are, whatever bay you're fishing, is that there's only fish in 10% of it, and everything else is junk. That's not it at all. These spots are going to be isolated. The fish, if you're going up redfish, sea trout, snook, and flounder, the species that most of our members go after, they're all ambush predators, and so they're going to be holding near structure. And obviously, they want to eat as easily as possible without wasting energy. So they're going to be holding on structure with current flow. So if you're fishing spots that don't have either, then that's probably the 90% of the zone that has nothing. So it's as long as you just focus on keeping it simple. I think that if we're getting started, the biggest lesson learned that I wish somebody would have just kicked me in the butt with is that if I'm in a spot and I'm not catching fish, I shouldn't be going back to my tackle bag and trying a different lure and throwing that, and then trying a different rod, and then trying live bait and throwing that. If I'm not getting any strikes, like nothing at all, I'm probably just not a good spot. And there, even good spots are going to be dead during most of the day, right? Fish move, as Joe mentioned. So if you're not catching fish, the biggest lesson I wish we did is that we should have moved instead of sitting there and trying everything in our tackle bag, to then finally realize, oh, the fish aren't there, and now let's move. Like, don't be a 6-spot Steve. Like we were 6-spot Steves. Right? Basically, we had 6 spots for many years, and we would go, whether we're fishing Marco or Tampa, and we go back to those spots every time, like in the same rotation. We didn't really consider the wind direction. We definitely, we didn't consider the tides. We definitely didn't consider the tides and the wind, and how the combination of the two would impact where the fish hold. And we just went, and some days we caught fish, most days we didn't. And it's because we had no strategy. So long story short, if you're struggling with finding spots, the 90-10 in particular is make sure to go through our fishing school. We have a free fishing school. It has, whether beginner, intermediate, advanced, and it goes through the proper process to easily find spots. Where if you're a 6-spot Steve or even less spot Steve, you're going to have hundreds of spots that are all based on the conditions. That's really the key.
Three-spot Terry. We were really like 3-spot Terry or Tom. We just had 2 extra ones, 2 to 3, just in case someone was already in our other ones.
But that was the worst, right? Somebody's in our spot and like, oh my God, it was like our day is wrecked. And now it's like, okay, who cares? There's another spot just like it right around the corner. Let's just fish that one. And it's just more fun to explore too. So like, fishing is just so much more fun now that we got out of that 6-spot or whatever kind of rotation, and we're catching more fish, which is even more fun.
A couple things. You mentioned the fishing school. It's just fishingschool.com. We bought that URL just to host all that stuff there. So go to fishingschool.com. If you haven't checked it out, game changer. The other thing you mentioned, I want to rehash this because you said, hey, if you're maybe a beginner and you're just looking for areas that are going to hold fish, what did you say? Structure, number one, and then some sort of water movement, right? Like a belt, just bringing all the bait to the fish. Guess what? In general, usually has that. And I'm not saying this is the best fishing spot always, but guess what usually has structure all year long and usually has some moving water or bridges and or docks around inlets and passes, right? Where you're always going to have some water, a lot of water flowing, and you have, once again, a permanent structure. Those almost always hold some sort of fish. Like if the goal is just tight lines, maybe you've had a couple of trips where you're skunked and your kids are now to borderline where they don't go on a fishing with mom or dad anymore because it's boring. Go buy a bunch of shrimp and go find a bridge. It doesn't have to be the Skyway Bridge in Tampa. It doesn't have to be massive. It could be a really small bridge where there's not a lot of traffic, just to kind of get out of the way. But those, not always, but almost always work as long as you're not sitting there at the absolute dead slack tide.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, and also on bridges too, everything is 90-10, right? That's have that in your mind. So there's going to be a bridge and most of the feeding fish are going to be in small portions of that bridge. And so again, I'll take you back to the fishing school because we teach you how to determine what spots of the bridge are going to be the best, where you can see 1 foot contour lines just from the convenience of your own home. So before you get there, you're going to automatically know exactly which sections to target first. That way, again, it's all about maximizing your valuable time on the water. That fishing school is going to save you a ton of time. Obviously, the beginner section is covering this bridge fishing, whether you're fishing from the bridge or in a kayak or boat or whatever around the bridge. It covers it all, both, again, finding the locations as well as positioning on what parts of the bridge you fish, whether you're doing lures or light bait. So very, very helpful. Again, I just wish somebody would have showed us that years ago. Because it is basically the easiest way to, I can't say guaranteed you'll come back catching some fish, but it's very tough to get skunked if you follow the lessons in that video. And we've had hundreds of people go through it, and
hundreds, thousands, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but hundreds of people actually saying that it saved their day. So yeah, it is surprisingly easy once you go through it, but it's stuff that most people overlook. It's just all about the small details.
Yep. Fishingschool.com. Make sure to go there. Number 3, let's get right into it. That the rod is way more important than the reel. When we first started out, I remember, golly, we were saving our money to, go to a big box retailer like a Bass Pro. And guess where we spent the majority of our money and our time, like researching, was a reel, right? We wanted the nicest, fanciest reel. And we'd spend, upwards of $300. And this is back in the day. Like, oh man, we thought we had to have the nicest reel and had to, if it's going to be saltwater, especially, it's got to be even better. And then the rod was kind of an afterthought. And now, knowing what we know now, it's the absolute complete opposite of that, where the rod is where we put all the attention and the reel is kind of like, it's interchangeable. Don't even care so much. Talk about that. Yeah, there are some caveats, but especially for somebody beginner, intermediate for saltwater, spinning gear is just incredibly effective. I was similar to my fluoro preference, where I even tournament days, if I didn't have my fluoro line, like one of every spool, the day before the tournament, I'm like making a last second run to the shop to get more. I was that sold. I was the same way with bait cast reels. I would only use bait cast reels. I thought spinning reels were for chumps. And when braid came around, that totally changed the whole ball game. Now you can have that thin braid that is incredibly strong, has amazing feel. And now with a 7 or 7.6 foot medium power spinning rod, you can now cast these small lures very long distances. And in many cases, most of the year, some of the biggest and hungriest fish are up in shallow water. It's not like bass fishing. They snook reds that they really like to get up there and feed in shallow water. That's where a lot of the big mullet hang out. And if you're not able to cast long distances, those big smart fish, they will 100% know you're there before you get in casting range. So if you're using a 6.6 rod, whether bait caster or spinning, and 30-pound or 40-pound line, you're just not going to reach the fish.
So now even if I'm going after upper and overslot snook and redfish, if I'm up on the flats, I'm throwing no more than 10-pound braid. And it is shocking how much further, because I did some casting contest, and in one contest, it was a 10-pound braid versus a 20-pound braid, all else being equal. And the 10-pound braid casted about 20% farther.
All right, real quick. You've now already ruined number 4. Let's stick with the rod and the reel first. Number 4 is about going on.
Yeah. So anyhow, the spinning. Yeah, for spinning rods, the rod is everything, especially if you want to catch fish with lures. If you're just doing cut bait fishing, then it kind of goes 50-50. But for lures in particular, you have to cast far, feel the strikes. The rod is crucial, and get a 7 or at least 7. I recommend 7.5 foot rods, but about at least 7 feet, medium power, fast action, and get as expensive as you can. And then with the remaining budget, get your reel and your line.
And why? Let's tell them why. Why is the rod so? What does the rod do that the reel doesn't do?
Yeah, I mean, I can almost spin it the other way. The rod does pretty much everything except for apply drag when you're fighting the fish, and so which is what the reel does, obviously. And so the reel doesn't really have any crucial thing other than obviously reeling and reeling in. But any reel can reel in a lure just about the same. Some are a little bit smoother than others. But as far as the drag, that's where the reel comes into play. And there's a lot of reel companies that just make a big emphasis on, hey, I have a 20-pound drag or a 30-pound drag, whatever, some really high drag rating. You don't need that, right? For inshore saltwater, if you're using 10-pound line, the proper drag setting is 20 to 30% of the weakest line strength. So if we're using a 10-pound braid, all we need is a reel that has 2 or 3 pounds of drag capability, and that's everything, right? You literally use a little kid's Rainbow Bright reel or whatever, and it'll have 2 pounds of drag. And so again, for many years, I'm just the mistake I made is like in high school, all my lawn mowing money was going to buying these $200 reels, and because I thought that's what I needed to succeed. I was struggling. I never even considered the 90-10 zone, and I was just I need this nicer reel, and I did not need that. Even now that I'm not mowing, that I at least have some money to spend, I still don't use $200 reels in most instances. But I use much more expensive rods than that, because the rod is everything.
Yeah. So to reiterate, the rod is what makes the cast. It feels the strike. And when you have a really nice rod, you can tell the difference between a real fish, like a predator fish hitting it, versus a small dinky fish versus a little pinfish. You can tell the difference on all that. The rod is what's going to set the hook. It gives you the leverage to bring the fish in. If you watch like a really good angler fighting a tarpon or a big snook, it's not the reel that's cranked them in. They're using that rod to literally lever that fish in, right? The rod's doing all of the major work. And I think most people just think it's that reel. And man, we wasted so much money on that. So let's go to number 4. You kind of already tease it a little bit. And I think the term is just go lighter than you possibly imagine. And then maybe even a little bit more, right? And so we'll tell the story, right? Like when we started, I mentioned we go and we buy all this gear, and, we'd have 20, even 30 pound, main line, right? And 60 pound, 80 pound leader, thinking, oh man, well, what if we get that real big one? And now, knowing what we know, it is 10 in 2025. Obviously, if you're going after a massive tarpon or a really big snook, you might have one little tippet towards the very end. But in general, we are using 10-pound test, even for some of these big overslot redfish and monster trout. It is shocking what you can catch with really light tackle in inshore saltwater. And it's not just for the sport of it. You need it. If you're in an area that's got a lot of pressure and you're going out there with even 20-pound main line and 40-pound leader, you're going to catch fewer fish. Like 100% you will catch fewer fish. I know you're about to show something there. What do you got?
Going to this line spool doesn't show it, but we got both of us did it, but we got caught up in the transition from mono to braid, where we were in bass fishing. We'd use like a lot of 15-pound mono, and then we switched to saltwater, knowing that there's bigger fish. And we're like, man, like with braid, like the same diameter as mono, we can go up to a 50-pound braid and still have like a thinner diameter. And that's what, like, we were using 30 and 50-pound braid going after sea trout. Like, that's now in hindsight the worst thing we could have done. So the reason why I got in a tangent on braid earlier is because the braid, the line you use is very, very important for casting distance. The rod and the line combo is the key.
And in shallow, clear water, it's also massively important on what those fish can feel, right? You put a 50-pound braid through that water, when you got spooky big fish, I mean, they're gone. Like they're gonna probably feel and see that way before they would ever feel or see a 10-pound.
Did it freeze up?
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah, but that braid is crucial, and so always have the lightest braid you can handle. And what's shocking is that this light braid, like the 10-pound braid, as long as you have a good braid and a good knot, the actual breaking strength is more like 20 pounds. Like the Iowa J braid 8 grand has been the top tested so far. The testing has continued, so keep an eye out for future tests. But I've had that one, a 10-pound braid, break at over 26 pounds with the FG knot, to a 20 and 30-pound leader. That's awesome. That's way more power than you need to catch pretty much all fish, especially if you have your drag setting properly. But yeah, line is crucial, and 10-pound, just in general for flats, for normal flats, rivers, bays, 10-pound is plenty. If you're skipping lures under docks, then you obviously need to beef it up. And if you're fishing inlets and passes, you need to beef it up as well. If you have heavy structure with current flow and bigger fish, then don't do 10. It's not going to be enough. But still, 20 and max of 30. You don't need to have that 60. I still don't know why these bass anglers are throwing 60-pound braid for bass, but you do not need anything more than 30. Even when I'm tarpon fishing, it's 30. And then last time we were out with Captain Hollywood down to the Keys, tarpon fishing, we landed that tarpon that was a little over 100 pounds with 30-pound braid in 13 minutes. So you do not need, as long as you have the good line and good knots, you do not need really super thick line to catch big fish.
And the right rod. We had a really nice custom rod. Once again, yeah. Cool. All right. Number 5, the network effect. Not having a network. Even back to the early days, go to the Bible, it talked about the power of having advisors and going to get advice. We did not realize how powerful that was. And it wasn't that we were ignoring it. We just didn't know where to go. And when we started, anyone who's starting now is way, 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 way luckier. This is pre-Facebook. This is pre-YouTube. This was pre-online, right? This is pre all of that stuff. And there weren't online clubs. There weren't things like Salt Strong, back in the day. It was just kind of like go figure it out on your own through trial and error. And now, and Luke's got a cool story to share about what happened with him in the tournament series. But now that's what we do. I'm actually leaving tomorrow to go on a fishing trip, and guess what I've been doing? I've been in the community connecting with people and saying, hey, what are you seeing? Like, right, you can go find people that are going to be in the area you're going. And whether you're traveling, Texas or Alabama or the Carolinas or somewhere in Florida, you get to see all the fishing reports. You get to see like real-time data on what's happening. We got game plans where full-time coaches are now sharing, hey, here's exactly what I'm seeing on the water this week. I mean, that is crazy powerful compared to just going out there and winging it and hoping and praying where the fish are. When you can combine things like Smart Fishing Spots, the app that's showing you the best spots to go fishing, with the network effect, man, talk about an advantage. I remember hearing about KVD, who is probably got a record that will never be beat in terms of the amount of tournaments that he has won as a professional bass angler. I mean, he's won millions and millions of dollars. Beat Bill Dance's record, everyone else's record possible, KVD, Kevin Van Dam. And they said he would spend so much time and money on that network effect, it wasn't even funny. Meaning, before tournaments, there's a time that you're allowed to go talk to people and then it stops. He would go to those cities and talk to people. It's been rumored that he would pay $5,000-$10,000 just to go sit down and talk to some of the locals that fished that lake like every day. Like he wanted to go find the old salty guys, or I guess they weren't salty and freshwater, but find those old guys that are fishing those lakes every single day. And he goes, I'll pay you $5,000 to sit down with you. And I don't necessarily need your spots, like your GPS spots, but tell me exactly what the fish are doing right here, right now, and what they were doing this same time last year. Really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and I learned that too when I moved to Melbourne after college, and growing up, I was all West Coast of Florida fishing, and now I learned the East Coast. And met a buddy over there, and we decided to do this tournament series. And so, like all of my friends and people that I worked with, they all knew that I was fishing all the time, and they knew I was doing tournaments on the weekends. It was like at least once a month a tournament, and so I didn't want to look like a chump. And then like after we signed up and committed to the whole series, we realized that there's some full-time guides in there, and so we were just like, oh, like it was very intimidating. I didn't want to come home just getting told it's gone, but so we started fishing them, and then we started, obviously the guides had a huge advantage, right? They're out in the water every single day, and we're just a bunch of weekend warriors who are still learning. But we ended up befriending some of the other groups who weren't guides. And so we basically started helping each other out because not all of us could fish, right? Sometimes we couldn't even fish for a few weeks. And so we would just, whoever was fishing, we would just let each other know what was happening, what lures were working. And over time, even for that very first series, by the kind of the midpoint, and especially toward the end, at least one of us was placing almost every tournament. In many cases, multiple of us were placing in the money, and it was all about the shared information. It is crucial to have real-time trends, like what Cameron and Dan was paying for. Real-time trends of what's happening is way more important than year-over-year analysis, because every year is different. The fronts will come in sooner or later. There's more or less rain, whatever the cases are. There's never going to be an exact replica of the year before. And it's all about, like, I would much rather know what happened yesterday or 2 or 3 days ago than like 20 years worth of like stuff that happened the same month. Because I used to do that too. I'm an analytical guy. I would literally print out every tide chart when I'd fish. This was before the like our now we have it all digital for members. So I would literally print out every single one and mark on the tide chart what species I caught at the exact time. And I put the location, obviously the location was on the tide chart, and I would put it in a file, right? And then the next March, I would look up my March folder and see what I caught in that area. It was a waste of time because everything was so different. The conditions were different. And had I just had a network of people to rely upon, I could have had better information with way less effort.
And, if you've seen any of our ads for smart fishing spots or some of the little clips talking about it, if you don't know about Smart Fishing Spots, it's an app, and it essentially starts predicting based on a lot of trends and data that's coming in every day, every 15 or so minutes. There's new data coming in, where to fish and then when to fish, both actual day and then time of day. So it's trying to solve for really the biggest issues, right? Is where to fish and then when to fish that area. And some people will say, well, oh, it's not perfect. Of course, it's not perfect. I mean, it's a tool. It's a forecast. Yes, the closer it gets to the actual day and spot you're fishing, it gets a whole lot more productive and I guess way more accurate. But man, it is way better than just trying to wing it. But when you combine it with the network and the coaching, things like the fishing school and the real-time trends that we're posting every single week in that community, it gets really close to like almost not perfection, but very, very accurate. And it's fishing. Obviously, there are going to be days that even full-time guides who are out there 300 days a year, like, man, it was just a struggle. Yeah, we caught some fish. Like, it's rarely that they're just going to get skunked, but like, man, it was a grind is usually what a guide will say. And there are going to be those types of days. But if you're like me and you're not a full-time guide, we're not full-time guides. A lot of people think, oh, you must fish every single day. No, like we try to fish once a week, but we're certainly not fishing every day. I want every advantage possible. Like I want to be able to go out there and save time. I don't want to go home to my wife and tell her, oh, wait, you left me and the 3 kids at 4 in this morning to go fishing all day, and you came back and didn't catch anything. She at least wants to hear some cool stories, see some pictures. I'm pretty sure you're wired the same way. I want every advantage possible. I want every shortcut possible. I want everything that's going to give me an advantage over time, meaning where I'm not having to just bounce around or wade around or kayak around from 10,000 different spots, hoping and praying fish are going to be there. I want to go out there with some confidence. And that's what the Insider Club does. And it is a combination of the Smart Fishing Spots app and the coaching, like what Luke's talking about, the fishing school, and the network effect. When you combine those three things together, that's when you can become really consistent, really, really fast. That's how you can leapfrog your friends and go from being someone who's never caught a redfish or a trout before to someone who's catching them on a pretty consistent basis. So just wanted to just share that. And if you are on the fence, it comes with a 365-day, 100% money-back guarantee your first year. So either you're catching more fish and saving time and saving money ultimately on your tackle as well. We have tackle discounts on everything you can imagine. And if those things don't happen, then you don't pay. It's that simple.
And as you mentioned, that software, the Smart Spot software is awesome. And it's really just, it's used for a starting point. This is for you to get started. The ultimate goal is to get plugged into a network. And whether you join the Insider Club or not, at least join a fishing club of some sort. The fishing clubs, there's usually going to be some in some of the bigger cities, but they can only meet in person. It's tough to meet them. With ours, it's online, and it's the biggest saltwater fishing club that I know of. Definitely the biggest one in the U.S. And there's a way we have the community, and you can filter for your region. And it's just a really good way to find some friends that you can get out and fish with and meet and basically replicate what I ended up doing with those guys that we were fishing against in the tournament, where we all got better. We all got way better, much faster than we ever would have had we tried to do it ourselves. And it was fun. It was just fun. I was meeting people and it pretty much, so far, everybody that loves fishing is just a good person. And it's just a great way to meet some fun people while getting much better at actually catching fish more consistently than you ever thought possible. I never would have dreamed that we would have been, we were actually profitable the very first season in that tournament series because we got connected. And so the core lesson here is just get connected somehow. We obviously recommend the fishing club because it's the Insider Club, because it's the only thing that actually guarantees results. If somehow you don't think that it's worth way more than you paid, just let us know and you get the money back. It's that simple.
And you can go join at saltstrong.com. So the 3 URLs to remember, saltstrong.com is where you go to join. If you're already a member, you'll be logged in. If you go to saltstrong.com, that goes right to the community. So community.saltstrong.com is the site it forwards to when you're already logged in. And then fishingschool.com. So that's the fishing school we've set up for everyone. And then fishstrong.com is our online tackle store. We're putting in new stuff pretty consistently, and we're trying to keep it down like under 1,000 SKUs. If you don't know what that means that many total products. And to put in perspective, like some of the big box stores have hundreds of thousands. So we're trying to give you only what we know works, that we want to put our own money into. This is stuff that we're buying with our own hard-earned money, and give you really, really big discounts on it because we're buying a lot of the stuff, in bulk for our almost 60,000 members now. So fishstrong.com is the tackle store, and our members save approximately 20 to 30% off most things in the store. Sometimes, $100 off of some of the high-end rods and stuff like that. Definitely check that out. You can obviously buy anything there, even if you're not a member, but you'd be crazy not to join and start, saving 20 to 30% off everything. And then if you are already a member, make sure to get in that community. It is such a valuable resource for you. Those of you guys who've seen Scott Ray and Grayson as well. These are two guys who are very experienced anglers, and both of them are like, man, how come you guys don't talk about this more? Like we joined for some of the tactics and tackle discounts, but like this community is priceless. And so we are going to continue to talk about it more. I think sometimes we take it for granted because we've been doing this now for 9 years and it's like a little family to us. But yeah, that is so valuable. So if you are a member, make sure to get in there, introduce yourself if you haven't yet. Share some fishing reports. We give away over $1,000 of free stuff in that community every month as well. Heck, we've given away paddle boards and trolling motors. I mean, some really, really cool stuff. So just for being active in the community. So that's it. Saltstrong.com. We appreciate you guys. Hopefully this was a helpful one. And if you're watching this on saltstrong.com on the WordPress site, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you, or on YouTube. If this makes it on YouTube, which it probably will. So. And hopefully you guys like this new format. This is a new video podcast thing. So I pray it all worked and recorded. If you're seeing it or hearing it, it means it probably did. Look, anything else?
No, good times. Yeah, just hopefully it's helped you save some money and catch more fish. That's what it's all about.
See you guys. We out.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.